All right, today on Locked On MLB, it's election day, and we're going to look at the ballot. No, not that ballot, the Hall of Fame ballot.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start your season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. I'm dropping this on election night, and I am promising you that I am not going to be political. This is a safe haven for people who are trying to get away from the politics. It's too much. But we are going to be talking about the new Hall of Fame Classic Era ballot that came out about 2 days ago, and I can think of no one better than the co-author of Cobra. I have it right here. It's also on my Kindle. Cobra, A Life of Baseball and Brotherhood by Dave Parker. I don't have Dave Parker here. I have the other Dave. I have Dave Jordan returning to Locked On MLB. Welcome aboard, buddy.
Sully, thanks for inviting me into the baseball safe space.
Oh, this is a safe space. I know I have people from all stripes, all beliefs, all lack of beliefs. Everyone listens to the show, and all political views are welcome as long as we're talking baseball here. And I've been too frightened to look at the television today, so might as well talk baseball here. Dave Jordan wrote this wonderful book about the man who's behind me right there, Mr. Dave Parker. I have Jim Rice and Dave Parker. Was it the baseball preview from 1979, the first season I remember. Dave, you've been on the show before, and we've talked about the fact that, well, the Cobra was really one of the all-around great players of his era, a legit superstar, to the point where he's on the cover of Sports Illustrated to talk about who's the best player in baseball, and I'm sure the Cobra would say he was. Yeah. But for those people who were too young or not even alive to see the great Dave Parker play, how would you describe him? What's the best way to talk about him as a player?
Well, basically, I'll put it this way. Growing up, playing Little League and whatnot, I would come to the plate, and I was around average height, at 9, 10, 11. But they would call me Big Dave. Basically, you remember every kid named Dave in 1979, 1980 was Big Dave. Mm-hmm. And that's when he would step up to the plate, Ralph Kiner would call him, "Here comes Big Dave Parker." I mean, that was who he was. He was big. He was imposing.
And he was just an amazing all-around player. Do you like newfangled sabermetric stats? Well, he was a 6 or 7 WAR player for a gigantic chunk of his career, including leading the league in WAR in 1978. Do you like more traditional stats? Was a 2-time batting champion. In 1978, he led the league in WAR, if you like that. Batting average, slugging, OPS, OPS plus, ROBA. I don't even know what that is. RBAT plus. I don't even know what that is. He led it. Total bases. If you like home runs, he had 30 of them. You liked runs batted in, he drove in 117. He stole 20 bases that year. He had a rifle for an arm. I sound like Frank Costanza describing Jay Buhner at this point, but he led the league in all sorts of categories on a pretty wide range. I mean, he led the league in slugging in 1975 and runs batted in 1985. I mean, he was an all-star as late as 1990. I mean, he had a remarkable career for a long stretch of time.
There's an interesting statistic if you go deep into the sabermetric weeds called basically base runners scored percentage, or BRS plus. The percentage of base runners who scored on the batter's play, not necessarily an RBI.
Right.
Since 1947, there have been 113 players who have ranked by our BRS for the percentage, who have had over 9,000 at-bats or plate appearances in the major leagues. Of those 113 players, Clemente is ranked number 12. Al Oliver is ranked number 6. Willie Stargell is ranked number 5. Mr. Dave Gene Parker is tied for number 1 with Manny Ramirez in this category.
Wow. Well, and you go, by the way, similarity scores on baseballreference.com, the single greatest website in the history of the planet Earth. Of the top 10 comparable players, you have Tony Perez, Hall of Fame, Billy Williams, Hall of Fame, Harold Baines, Hall of Fame, and Andre Dawson, Hall of Fame, and Al Oliver, his former teammate, who probably would have been in the Hall of Fame if it wasn't for collusion, as he was knocking on 3,000 hits in his career. It's funny. I was just in Oakland about a month or so ago to be at the final game at the Oakland Coliseum, and they showed a lot of clips. Of course, Dave Parker's a clip of his double is shown all the time because it was what they were playing just before the earthquake hit.
Right.
But in just 2 years, he notched a giant place in the heart of A's fans.
Yep.
With his 3 home runs he hit in the postseason in 1989, and the fact that when he ran around the bases, he had his kind of fingers going like he was dancing to a song that only he could hear, which I can only assume was Sister Sledge's "We Are Family."
That was what he calls the thing. That after he got better from his injuries in 81, 82, and 83, when he arrived in Cincinnati, when he started hitting dingers, he said, I'm going to do a little something special to let everybody know I arrived again. And that thing is called the thing when he does the little fingers. That's like a special, that was a special term that he did every time he slammed one over the fence.
And of course, what to me is mind-boggling, look, I'm not a big believer in saying first ballot meaning anything. If you're a first ballot Hall of Famer, or if you're brought in by the Veterans Committee, I don't care. I was at the Hall of Fame this year. I went to Cooperstown this year, and I had a wonderful time there. And I to the point where I was on Zillow looking for a condo in Cooperstown, or at least in Oneonta. And when you look at the plaques, whether it's Turkey Stearns from the Negro Leagues right behind me, or Babe Ruth, or Rabbit Marinville, or Ted Simmons, it doesn't say what ballot they were on. They didn't say what committee they were on. They're part of the pantheon. They're part of the narrative. What blows my mind is that between 1997 and 2011, he was on the ballot, and he peaked in 2000 with 20%, a little more than 20% of the vote. He never scratched it. But he was on long enough that it was clear a bunch of writers were like, yeah, put this man in, but never got the momentum, and finally fell off the ballot in 2011. He didn't get 3 times he's been on Veteran Committee ballots, and he's on again.
Yep.
He is on again. And I think will not surprise you at all that I believe he belongs in. I believe he helps tell the story of baseball. And I would love to honor him while he's still breathing and still with us. I have a feeling you might have a similar point of view.
Sully, the long-established voting metrics for the BBWAA for decades, and I think that these metrics, there are these metrics that I believe are overlooked in the pure conversation of Hall of Fame spiritual eligibility. Rules are playing record, ability, and contributions of the game. And his playing record almost gets in there, gets into the edge, but it's his ability, his playing ability. He was the most talented and gifted baseball player in the 1970s. And that's just not my opinion. That's the opinion of numerous athletes that I interviewed for Cobra, other Hall of Famers, and players that have done remarkably both inside and outside the game. And what Parkway was able to accomplish with his 2 leg injuries in high school would have crushed most athletes. He underwent 6 or 7 knee procedures and continued to be effective until the age of 39. When you split up that Milwaukee season in 1990, he played every day and finished the All-Star break batting .315, and he made his way onto the All-Star team at that time. And if you want to talk about contributions to the teams that he played on, Dave Parker, more than any other teammate in the last half century, has been cited for his guidance and his nurturing with all these young players. Eric Davis, Cal Daniels, the most underrated hitter of the late 80s and early 90s, by the way. And Sheffield, Les, you alluded to McGuire and Canseco for those A's teams. That was the primary reason that Tony La Russa begged the ownership to go get him, to bring him into that clubhouse and get them over the top spiritually. And he was also, people forget, Parker was the hitting coach for McGuire in '98 in St. Louis. So he's got a lot going on. And I'll add this, speaking of Cooperstown, Barry Larkin, not only did he insist that Parker and his wife travel with him to Cooperstown when he was there to make his induction speech, he stayed in the same house with Larkin, made sure that Parker sat up close, and he told the 50,000 some odd fans in attendance that weekend how vital Dave was to his career. And those elements don't show up in the RBAT Plus, but they are just as relevant within the aggregate of his holistic resume toward any kind of worthiness of the Hall.
And in a way, he was the successor to Clemente. I mean, Clemente, of course, died in around, it was on New Year's Day of 1972, bleeding into 73. Parker makes his debut in 1973 as the right fielder for the Pirates. And he doesn't start, he starts 31 games in 73. So it's not like they anointed him right away. But by 74, they were back in the postseason, 74, 75. And of course, the We Are Family, Willie Stargell was obviously Pops, the leader and everything like that. But they don't get there without Parker. They're not there without Dave Parker, who was the MVP of the National League in 1978. And I believe when you were on the last time, I told you the story. I'll tell it relatively quickly. When I had the great Ellis Valentine on as a guest, that at the 1977 All-Star game, Parker, Valentine, and Dave Winfield did an impromptu right field throwing contest from the corner of right field at Yankee Stadium over to third base. Not televised, not staged, just 3 alpha dogs wanting to prove who is the best. Now, Valentine proved that he was the best, but Parker, who Jim Rice sure knows, he's got a great arm, was able to, throw that cannon from the right field.
Yeah, that was an incredible time. And the stories that Parker's told me, that just getting off the All-Star bus, walking into Yankee Stadium, it was him and it was Winfield and Valentine. They kind of palled around a little bit because it was all their first time there. And they collectively just took in the awesomeness of their accomplishment as Black baseball players. And it was really a special time for both Parkway and Winnie and Allie Valentine. They speak so highly of it and each other.
Well, Parker is on the Hall of Fame Classic Era ballot, and hopefully some wrongs will be righted. We come back from this break, we're going to talk about some of the other players who are on said ballot, and I have some very strong opinions about who should go in. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 to get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets and the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Dave Jordan's with us, the co-author of Cobra, A Life of Baseball and Brotherhood, which is a must-read for all baseball fans. Someone requested in the off-season I do a list of some of my favorite baseball books. I read at least a baseball book a month. That's just how I'm designed. And I got your book either for you didn't send it to me. I bought it. Or it was I either bought it or it was either a Christmas gift. But I read it in 2 weeks and just sort of and it was like catnip for me because of course Parker's one of my favorite players, and I've always I hope that if he gets elected, there's some people saying if you hear any noise, it's just me and the boys bopping. And Google that if you understand what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. But we made it clear that we're all in on Dave Parker. Let's just go over quickly the other people who are on the Classic Era ballot. Dick Allen, with a lot to say about him. Ken Boyer, Negro League star John Donaldson, a man who's on my ballot in California, Steve Garvey, Senate hopeful. I swear I'm not getting political here. Negro League's legend and manager, Vic Harris. Tommy John, who probably should get in as a pioneer. Of course, Mr. Parker and the late Louis Tiant. Of that group, I'm not going to pretend I know enough about John Donaldson or Vic Harris. If the historical research has shown that they were overlooked and belong in, I will not protest either way. I obviously believe Parker belongs in. I also think Dick Allen belongs in. I think Tommy John belongs in. I understand why Boyer, Garvey, and Tiant are on the list. And as a Red Sox fan, breaks my heart that I wouldn't have Tiant. But if he was in, believe me, I'm not going to be showing up with pitchforks and torches. But if you were on the committee, who would get your check marks?
Well, let's talk about El Tiante first. I mean,
okay,
when you compare his numbers to somebody like Sutton, they're really, and I did this in preparation. I compared Tiant's holistic his career versus Dodgers Sutton, and it was very, very close. I mean, granted, they're about tied, but then you get the rest of Sutton's career kind of for free. Tiant almost gets there. He almost gets there. He's very close to somebody like Jim Cott, who I consider he gets in under what I call the Rizzuto rule. He was a borderline candidate with a legendary broadcasting career. Someone like Keith Hernandez is under the Rizzuto rule in my sense, but Tiant's pretty close. Boyer, whatever your stance is on Scott Rowland, Boyer's real similar. Boyer has a little, excuse me, he has a little black ink. Rowland has no black ink, but Rowland has a ton of gray ink where Boyer doesn't have too much. And Boyer's a little behind Rowland, a near legendary ball player, but remains kind of a borderline candidate. Garvey, who was more famous than him in the 70s? Hank,
nobody.
Seaver, Bench, Pete, Reggie. They're all in the same category for the most part. And I got a great sidebar quickly. Garvey had that injury in San Diego in 87, damaged tendon to the left shoulder. Let's say that injury never happens. He puts up a late stage Garvey season, 255, 15 dingers, 80 RBIs. The Padres give him a gold watch and say it's time to go. That was the last year of his contract. In 1988, is it possible that he ends up on the Dodgers playing first base?
If you take a look if you take a look at that roster, I had a chance of playing first base for the Dodgers. By the way, do you know who was cut from that Dodgers team? Don Sutton.
That's right. Halfway through,
they gave him one more shot. The tank was empty.
Yeah,
the tank was empty.
It was
if Garvey didn't have the injury that prevented him, because he was the one who was taking aim at Lou Gehrig.
Yes.
If he had, and frankly, I think it's more impressive that Ripken did it because he was playing the middle infield position.
100%.
I mean, nothing against Garvey, and this is, I swear I'm not being political. I'm not talking about who I voted for here in California. For those of you who know what I'm talking about, he's running for Senate. Yep. He has about as good a chance of winning as the late Don Sutton does, but I digress. Garvey and Tiant strike me as both those players who had really high peaks and didn't do it for long enough. Also, Garvey was the type of player who doesn't survive modern analytical
Yeah.
analysis.
Yep.
That a lot of things he was great at are not valued as highly
Yeah.
as they were in the 1970s. That's no fault of his. He did what he was asked to do, and he had a wonderful career. I don't see him getting in. I don't see him getting in, and I don't. And I don't. Once again, anyone who got this far, if they do get in, I am not going to show up to Cooperstown with an air horn and start throwing tomatoes. John Donaldson was a very had a very long career. As a lot of the people in the Negro Leagues barnstormed for a long time, and it's difficult to know what stats he really had because there was a lot of times they were playing against amateur teams. There was a little bit of the bingo long quality of playing going to towns and challenging the team.
Right.
So a lot of times you didn't even know the quality of the players that you were playing against. But he played, according to his bio here, he played for 10 years before the organized Negro Leagues of the 20s were formed. So we may have lost his prime to basically barnstorming. But he played 42 years.
Yeah.
And throughout his and the historians who analyze his career say that he should be considered alongside some of the great Negro League players who did get in and may have had more of a concrete recording of their career and their accomplishments.
Well, just to throw this in 1952, the Pittsburgh Courier, which really covered the Negro baseball, as we all know, they had a player-voted poll of the Negro League, from the Negro League players and retired players, and both active and retired, I should say. And they named John Donaldson one of the greatest Negro League players ever. So there's that historical record there to inform those.
And again, I'm as someone who has Turkey's face looming over my shoulder at all times, I'm a big proponent of erring on the side of letting the legends stand alongside because they never got a chance to play alongside.
100%.
Which brings to Vic Harris, who was a wonderful player in his own right, but was also a hugely successful manager for the Homestead Grays, who, along with the Kansas City Monarchs, were the two great teams of that era. And, all the research shows that he was one of the great managers of his time, and he wound up having the Homestead Grays finish first place 7 times under his stewardship. So, if Vic Harris is in, not a voice of protest would come from me.
And it's not his first rodeo on the ballot either. Last time he was there, he received 10 of the votes. You need 12. There's a decent chance that he's in the red zone for it. So,
all right, which brings us to the other two for me. And in fact, we'll take a quick break here because I have a lot to say about both of them. I'm sure you do. All right, your sex life is important, but your schedule is busy. You don't have time to go to a doctor's office and get treated for ED. Through HIMSHims, you get a personalized ED treatment without stepping foot outside your door. HIMSHims is changing men's health care by providing you access with affordable sexual health treatments in the comfort of your home. HIMSHims provides access to a range of doctor-entrusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis, and they're generic for up to 95% cheaper prices. The process is 100% online, and so there's no need to feel uncomfortable at a doctor's office. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, HIMShims can help you find the ED option that works for you. Start your free online visit today at HIMS.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment option. HIMS.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See websites for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based upon product and subscription plan. Most of us that like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on a Mahomes rookie card just isn't in the cards. I love collecting, but that's some serious money to drop. Thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com, now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of the retail price. Every card that I listed was hit from last week's Arena Club slab pack drop, and Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. Arena Club slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. After your pulls are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your showroom for safekeeping, selling, trading, or auction. The Arena Club grading processes are accurate, fast, and transparent, with a full grade rationale provided and explanation of how your card was scored. Whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the card collecting platform you have to check out. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/LockedOnMLB and use code LockedOnMLB. That's arenaclub.com/LockedOnMLB, code LockedOnMLB for 10% off your first purchase. Steve Garvey's teammate, Tommy John, he could go in as a pioneer. That he went in and he risked his arm. He risked his moneymaker to, to basically, how many careers have been saved because of Tommy John? How many times has a player been able to come back from what would be a career-ending injury? When he did the surgery in 1974, he was 31 years old, already had a wonderful career, mainly with the White Sox at that point, a few years with Los Angeles, and missed all of 75 and came back, and by 77 was a 20-game winner, throwing 220 innings a year, was an all-star 3 straight years, went to the Yankees, and pitched until 1989. He added 15 years to his career. 15 years is a good career. That's what he did after he had the surgery. And had some wonderful, he was a 13-game winner, throwing 187 innings as late as 87. So he finished, by the way, with 288 wins. Now, I'm not the biggest, I don't think wins is necessarily a great metric for anything. But when you consider he had this surgery in 74, to say he probably could have won 12 games in 75. Snuck 12 games in somewhere. I would love to go through the end part of his career, how many times the bullpen blew a game for him. But he almost got to 300 wins where this would have been, he would have been on the first ballot.
The
players
strike in 81 maybe cost him 12 starts too.
That's true. And the one game strike in 85, who knows what havoc that wreaked. He could have pitched both ends of a doubleheader, but I mean, I think he gets in he should get in based on his, what he did as a pioneer, but he deserves a lot of credit for what he did as a pitcher.
Yeah, again, it's sort of a variation of the Rizzuto rule there. He had a borderline, maybe a little more than a borderline candidate, but he had this amazing event that contributed to the face in the game of baseball that gets him over the line.
Looking at the similarity scores, here are the pitchers that the similarity scores: Jim Cott, Robin Roberts, Burt Blyleven, Ferguson Jenkins, Early Wynn, Tom Glavine, Burley Grimes, Tony Milani, Don Sutton, Eppa Rixley. Except for Tony Milani, or maybe Mullane, I don't even know who he is. Forgive me. I know a lot about baseball. I don't know him. All of those are Hall of Famers.
Yep.
And how grateful are we that Tommy John had the surgery and not Al Robrowski or Win Remmerschwall or some other name that's a real mouthful. Tommy John. He's having a Win Remmerschwall. No. Thank God it wasn't Pete LaCock. Okay. Sorry about that. We had a HIMSHims ad. What do you want from me? Yeah, I mean, just as I said, just as a pioneer, let the man in.
I agree.
So I believe he would. Would you put him in, even if it's a Rizzuto?
No, absolutely. I think that he falls under that category, that he's a hybrid and he adds something to the Hall that probably wasn't there before, and he tells a story that you wouldn't have heard if you had just walked into the Hall for the first time learning about baseball.
Which brings us to Mr. Dick Allen, Richard Anthony Allen, the wampum walloper Dick Allen, who should have been in the Hall of Fame a while ago. He definitely should have been in the Hall of Fame in one of the veteran committee where he fell a vote short. He fell a vote short. And in the last two veteran, he fell a vote short in 2015 when we could have had him in the Hall while he was alive. Now, he is not. Now, we lost Dick Allen. He died on December 7th, 2020. As far as I know, he has not added to his stats since then. He was one of, if not certainly one of the best right-handed hitters in his era, played in an obscene pitcher's era and put up great numbers. And I just believe that by modern metrics, by metrics then, to me, he's a Hall of Famer. He belongs in. And he's just, it's a shame that he's no longer with us. By the way, what is his connection to Tommy John?
The trade, the 71 trade, I believe. 71
yeah, they were traded for each other. Dick Allen was playing for the Dodgers, and he was traded to the White Sox for Tommy John.
Correct.
How often do you have Hall of Famers traded for each other? Let's go.
Yeah. Exactly.
Let's go. So, no, I absolutely believe that Dick Allen belongs in. To me, that could be the biggest he and Parker are the biggest no-brainers on this ballot.
Yeah, no doubt. He put up some extraordinary numbers in an era, the mid to late 60s, before the mound was lowered, that they were just incredible. And he continued that once he got into Chicago. At one point, he was the highest paid player in the game.
Yeah, and it's like you said, in an era when Yastrzemski would lead the league with a 301 average, and playing in the National League where he had to face Seaver and Drysdale and Koufax and Gaylord Perry and Juan Marichal. He didn't have to face Jim Bunning, that was his teammate, but all these future Hall of Famers just throwing at you every single Bob Gibson, for goodness sakes. And those are just the aces. They're number two starters. Sutton was no one to sneeze at. Mike McCormick and with San Francisco. So all these pitchers he had to face, and he was putting up numbers when he was having the high batting average, the great slugging percentage. He would have an OPS of over 1,000 in 1966 when pitchers ruled the roost, and he was able to do that with 40 home runs. Bat 317, an OPS of 1.027, an OPS plus of 181. That's what he's doing in the greatest pitchers era we ever saw. I always give a boost to hitters who hit in the 60s, just like I give a boost to pitchers who pitched during the steroid era.
Yep.
If you started during the steroid era as a pitcher, you're getting did Mussina belong in or not? He was pitching to Lou Ferrigno. you know? And Dick Allen was facing, basically Bugs Bunny, one, two, three strikes, you're out, That's who he was facing there.
Yeah.
So, if I had the ballot, and I don't, I want to stop that rumor immediately. I have my ballot would include Allen, John, and Parker, and probably with a little more, and I would want to have Donaldson and Harris on there as well to honor their era. So I'm a big hall guy. I like a big stage. I like a big celebration. Do you have a similar? Is that your ballot too?
I think so. That sounds about right with everything. And I'll tell you, since you asked me to come on here, I did a little deep dive on Dick Allen, and the saddest thing that I really saw was his work in '77. Now you look at his stats in 1977; there's nothing to write home about. He left the team in June, but Dick Allen in that season, at the end of the first month, the Oakland A's, which had finished 63 and 98, they were 12 and 9, one game out of first. Dick Allen was batting .313, 4 homers, 22 RBIs. Now, when you prorate that out, that never works that way, but that was the beginning of what should have been a nice Dick Allen season.
Yeah.
And the politics between Charlie O and Jack McKeon, who was fired with the 26 and 27 record, and Dick Allen absolutely destroyed that ball club, and it was sad. But he still had some baseball in him, and for whatever reason, it just didn't work out that year.
See also Al Oliver, but that's a whole different thing. Like next year's Hall of Fame ballot, you have a bunch of, shall we say, problematic players. A-Rod's still on the ballot. Manny Ramirez is still on the ballot. And you have Beltran, who, I don't think is problematic, but who am I going to say? You have Chase Utley, people will be kicking around Andrew Jones and CC Sabathia and Felix Hernandez and Jimmy Rollins and players like that. And of course, the big name is Ichiro, who is obviously going to get in. And maybe people will kick around Dustin Pedroia as well. It makes me feel very old when I see Ben Zobrist is on the ballot. So wait a minute, I thought he was still playing.
Yeah.
But I'm a big Hall guy, and I've thought if there's someone like Ramirez, who obviously his stats warrant it, and Rodriguez, whose stats warrant it, and I think that we already have players in there who are juicers. I don't think anyone could deny that. I think some point you kind of gotta, we gotta get over it a little bit. Maybe one way to do that is to have them in on a day where we got a whole bunch of people on there. It'll look like an Earth, Wind, and Fire concert, just as many people as humanly possible.
Right.
And have a standing O for Dave Parker and Tommy John, and all those other players all get in.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. That would be a real good time.
But let's face it, you and I, what we're rooting for the most is Dave Parker.
Yes.
For Dave Parker to get in finally while he's still alive.
Yes.
No more of this posthumous crap.
No.
I almost said the thing would give me we still have the Cobra.
Yes.
Let's celebrate the man.
Well,
he's worthy.
We're doing that as much as we can. We're actually in the midst of producing an audio version of Cobra. The paperback comes out next April.
But really? Oh, cool.
Yeah. But the big news is that we finished the first draft on another book. That's basically an enchanted voyage through 1974 black baseball.
Oh my God, I'm in.
Yeah. All we're going to say that it's basically Ball 4 meets Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And I'm completely serious when I say that.
Well, get your tux ready because that's going to be turned into a great movie too. Man, I wish I had a bigger piece of that picture. All right. Well, hey, Dave Jordan, by the way, if you're a baseball fan and you like to read about great baseball and great characters and a wild roller coaster story, life story of a great, great player who went through a lot and should have his great moment at the end in the Hall of Fame, you've got to read Cobra, written by Dave Parker and our guest Dave Jordan. I'm not kidding. This is it is a fabulous baseball book. It was catnip for me. It's not short, and I read it like I couldn't put it down. As I said, I think I told you this before. I'll give the greatest honor I can give an author This book was in my bathroom. No better honor to an author that this book was in my bathroom.
Man.
Because that's, you do it was on it went from my nightstand to the bathroom and back. No better compliment to a book. Only the greats.
Oh,
Only the greats do that.
That is on the throne in so many ways. Thank you so much.
All right, Dave Jordan. Follow him at InStream Sports. You can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking about the classic baseball era ballot with the great Dave Jordan. I'm the great Paul Sullivan. But please, I'm begging you to just call me Sully.